Everybody know about Dylan Mulvaney? Bud Light, right?
Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley, who, yes, I guess is still running for president, was at a campaign stop where she made some anti-trans remarks, of course, and guess what? Did not go over well. So I'm going to show you the clip. I'm going to get some reports, or a report from a reporter on the ground with what he saw there, as well as some polling later on showing that maybe this is not an issue that Republicans should be discussing too much if they want to win. But before I even get to that, I do want to show you, just to acknowledge that, yes, Nikki Haley is still in the race. Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina. You would not know that unless I just told you. She's at 4.2%, behind Trump, DeSantis, Pence. Pence is ahead of Nikki Haley. All right. But the reason why I want to highlight these remarks coming up here as the recount cut out is that this is the kind of thing you're going to hear all of these candidates discuss, whether it's, Trump, whether it's DeSantis. And it shows you that, at least depending on where you are, this is in New Hampshire, depending on the audience, this is not a winning issue. And the people that typically show up to these sorts of events are, diehard voters. In this case, we're talking more businessmen, so it's a bit of a different audience. But when we get especially to the polling here and showing you just, nationally the feelings around these issues, this is not a winning issue for any of them. They need to move the hell on. But before I do that, before I get to the polling and breaking down the ridiculous points made in this video, here is the video. So Nikki Haley here at Politics and Eggs in New Hampshire, making just the most ridiculous comments imaginable.
We've got biological boys playing in girls' sports. It is the women's issue of our time. Where is everyone? My daughter ran track in high school. I wouldn't even know how to have that conversation with her. How do we get our girls comfortable with biological boys in their locker room? It's not okay. Everybody know about Dylan Mulvaney? Bud Light, right? Make no mistake. That is a guy dressed up like a girl making fun of women. Women don't act like that. Yet everybody's wondering why a third of our teenage girls seriously contemplated suicide last year. What are we doing to them? We're supposed to be growing strong girls, confident girls, not ones being made fun of.
All right. Who knows what the hell any of that was? So I'm going to get to trying to address some of the absurdity in this. I'm not sure how the existence of trans people has anything at all to do with depression in teens who aren't trans and girls not feeling strong and confident. Like the whole, especially the end there, how she tries to tie it up, none of it makes any sense. But before I get to addressing that and the polling and some other stuff, this is the reporter on the ground. This is David Weigel here, saying Nikki Haley in New Hampshire this morning and quoting her, and then says she's politics and eggs, not a red meat crowd. No applause for a line that gets some elsewhere. So as I said, it's a bit of a different crowd. It's still a Republican crowd, but not the, I guess, some applause that she might get for a comment like that. He goes on to say Politics and Eggs is a nonpartisan breakfast speech / Q&A series, polite crowd of businessmen and nonprofit people, not a GOP-based crowd, as in, not like a mega crowd. But later on, Nikki Haley made the same comments. Weigel here saying Haley's now at the Manchester Country Club, where she repeats the Dylan Mulvaney line, who, by the way, in case you don't know, I covered this when it happened. It's just a waste of time. Dylan Mulvaney is a trans activist, did a single sponsored Instagram post for Bud Light. That's what set off all of this reaction from conservatives about, pouring out their Bud Light. Kid Rock shot a bunch of cases of Bud Light. It's so stupid. But that's what set this all off, is the existence of a trans person doing a sponsored post for Bud Light. But saying here that line gets a response this time. Some groans about the Bud Light campaign. So I'm not sure if those are positive groans uh, or negative groans, or what, you know, maybe just groaning about the existence of that campaign. Again, a single sponsored post. But again, it shows you the power of how conservative media can grab just something completely insignificant and make it into a month's worth of content. Now, on the bathroom stuff, because this is where we get to this stuff that has been debunked 1,000 times in 1,000 ways, but we have to keep addressing it, or at least acknowledging it, because some people don't pay attention and are just reactionary, don't understand that this is not a big deal. On the issue of trans people using bathrooms, yes, people use bathrooms, including trans people. You know who else use bathrooms? Gay people, lesbian people. Are we supposed to, what, not allow gay people into men's rooms? Not allow lesbians into women's rooms? Like, do you want an officer in front of every single bathroom inspecting your sexual orientation and gender? Like, what is the ultimate goal here? And why is a presidential candidate discussing any of this? This is clearly just a way to try and rile up the base, make them fearful of other people they don't understand, and get their support that way. She's just, this is not to defend Nikki Haley. It's just to show you how empty these people are. I don't think Nikki Haley gives a shit, because most people don't give a shit, as I'm going to show you. But when it comes to Republican, the hardcore Republican voting base, like the Trump voter, the DeSantis voter, they at least somewhat care a little bit. So this is something that's going to be used by these candidates, and another way to distract from these candidates having to discuss any actual real economic issues. And maybe, you know, how their wages are incredibly low due to massive corporations and a lack of policy and regulation. But that, of course, does not support the corporate agenda of these candidates, so they're not going to discuss that. But just to touch on the bathroom stuff again, like, this is Dylan Mulvaney. Do you want Dylan Mulvaney? Do you want her going into a men's room? That's what Nikki Haley's arguing. Dylan Mulvaney should be using a men's room. Where's the logic in any of this? And you've actually had the opposite effect. So I've seen several examples of this, but here's one. Cis woman mistaken as transgender records being berated in bathroom. So this woman went to a woman's room as someone who is a woman, and she was berated out of the bathroom because someone in there thought that she was a man, because of how she presents it in a more masculine or traditionally masculine way. What are we doing, people? Like, what is the ultimate goal? What is in the minds of people that think like this, that think that there's something scary about trans people using bathrooms? What do you think that they want to do? Go in there and peek at you taking a shit? Like, people go to the washroom to, guess what? Use the toilet. Like, I don't understand any of this, how any of this became anything. Because if you just take half a second to think, you would understand that this is not a real issue. But we are still talking about this. I was looking up articles to reference for this video, and I was seeing stuff from 2016, 2015. We are still talking about this. Man, I hope that I will not have to address this all that much longer based on how people feel about this issue, but we'll have to see. And just before I get to that, on the on teens that are considering ending their lives, who are, you know, depressed or whatever's going on in their life, this is a very important stat to understand here. So this is from 5 months ago, but there's a lot of data around this, supports more or less the same piece of data. More than 50% of trans and non-binary youth in the U.S. this year considered ending their lives. More than half of trans youth considered ending their lives. So if Nikki Haley's really concerned about teens and depression, then this would be a part of that conversation. Accepting trans people into society without discrimination would be a part of your platform. But Nikki Haley, of course, is just trying to get some votes. Now, Data from for Progress put this out back in March. I got a few data points here to share. Even Republicans think the amount of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation is excessive and political theater. So their question asked, there are currently 429 bills, and I believe that number is now over 500, passing through state legislatures aimed at limiting the rights of transgender and gay people in America. Which statement comes closer to your own view, even if neither is exactly right? So all voters, 64%, say this is too much legislation. Politicians are playing political theater and using these bills as a wedge issue, including 55% of Republicans. Most Republicans think this is excessive and political theater. Again, not a winning issue, especially nationally. If you have any hope at all of actually becoming the Republican candidate, having this as a part of your platform, even in the primary, it's going to haunt you come the national race. Next question here. Americans believe that transness is natural and normal, not a woke invention. So the question is, when thinking about the existence of transgender identities, which statement comes closer to your own view, even if neither is exactly right? Transgender identities are a natural phenomenon that has occurred throughout history. It's normal for free societies to have individuals identify outside the norm. So all voters, 57%, agree with that. Of course, most Democrats and independents, and Republicans, of course, do not. Showing you there is still there's still a lot of support for this sort of bigotry. You could maybe in some cases say complete ignorance still. I don't know how long we have to give these people to learn, but sure, ignorance. But that said, when it comes to actual policies, they feel a little differently. So this as well, this last piece here, Americans believe that transgender people should be allowed to change their bodies however they want. So when thinking about the right of transgender adults to pursue surgeries which change their appearance and body, which statement comes closer to your own view, even if neither is exactly right? Transgender adults should be allowed to change their bodies however they want. Free society should let people make their own choices, even for procedures they could regret. So all voters, about 69%, and Republicans even at 54%. Now, it's also worth noting here that regardless of any polling at all, I would be advocating for the right thing to do, which is to accept trans people, to allow them to exist, to let them be who they want to be. Because how is it any interest of yours? Just let people be who they want to be. It doesn't hurt you for someone to identify differently than you want them to identify. So the polling is just here to show you that as a political issue for even conservative candidates, it may help them a bit in the primary, but it's not going to be beneficial for them come any sort of national race. And also worth noting here, and I covered this in a separate video, but this is also from March, most in new poll view woke as positive term. So all of this focus around wokeness from the right, it's just, again, a waste of time. Most people see it as a positive. I'll link to my video from March on this below this video so you can see more about that. Last thing here, in case you didn't hear enough from Nikki Haley, she's going to be on CNN for a town hall. They're continuing their town hall series following the Trump debacle. So this one's going to be on Sunday. I would be surprised if I cover this. Maybe there'll be a moment there that's going to be, funny and worth poking fun at Nikki Haley for. But apart from that, who cares? Who cares about Nikki Haley? I'm more concerned about this ongoing anti-trans hate that is within a large swath of politicians and voters, and it's just going to continue until people properly understand that this is not anything to worry about. I mean, what disturbs me as well about what is going on with all this hate is we've seen this prop up again and again. It was a big issue around, George Bush and his attack on same-sex marriage, and then people grew up, became informed, stopped caring about that, and now it's become this is their new way to make this a wedge issue by focusing on trans individuals. We have seen it again and again that they've been on the wrong side of history, and as a society we have not learned. Even though the majority of people are on the right side, this is still an ongoing thing, to the point that politicians running for national office are making it part of their platform. This is the last thing. This is just my experience covering news generally and covering this story. I'm increasingly having to take breaks and lay down. Like, while I was prepping this story, at some point I just collapsed into jello, and I just had to go lay down. I'm not sure if this is this just a me issue? Is this a you issue as well? Are you experiencing any of this? Because it's just this onslaught of absolute garbage that is filling the airways, that people like Nikki Haley are spreading, people like Trump, of course, DeSantis, but even Democrats who are barely fighting at all, Joe Biden, who can not even lift a finger to fight on behalf of any marginalized group. Just the entirety of all of it is becoming, it's a mix of less interesting and just the amount of the weight that is, I don't know, that is putting on me, and just covering this shit every day. I don't know, folks. I don't know. I may be falling apart at the seams in front of your eyes right now, because I am over it. I'm over it. I cannot continue talking about this garbage all the fucking time. So we will see how, as I often say, we will see how I do in the coming weeks. But man, this trash like this just gets me so down, and it makes me less and less interested in engaging with any of it.